In the last video, we created a quote for a rewiring of a house. We sent the quote to the customer, got their acceptance, and then turned it into a job. So now the quote is closed and the job is open. And this is where we manage the work taking place on site. We manage the labor, the material, any purchasing related to the job, check off that all the tasks have been completed, and anything else that we need to do to manage this project. This is where we would do that. So you'll see that my screen layout looks very similar to the quote, so we have a few more tabs this time. If I look up in the summary fields here, up in the top right, you'll see that my margin has reset to 100% and my costs have reset to 0. So that's because we quoted for those costs, for the labor and for the material, but we didn't incur those costs yet. So we'll look at now how we do that. And notice as well, the balance to invoice is $10,800. That's the price that we quoted the customer, and that's the price they accepted. So no matter what cost goes onto this job now, our balance to invoice will never increase. In a quoted job, the balance to invoice will never go up. In a time and material job, by contrast, of course, as we add labor and material to the job, the balance to invoice will just keep going up. In a quoted job, we need to keep our costs down so that we still make a decent margin on this job, because that's what we quoted. So if I go over to my time tab here, how you recognize the cost of the labor is by the technician submitting their time. So they can put their time on the job, and that'll go both to their payroll, and it'll make sure that the costs hit the job. So if we click Add Time Slice, and this is what it looks like when somebody fills out a timesheet. So there's a few options that we have here. If we can change the date, if the guy forgot to do his time for yesterday, we can do that. So the time is already linked to the correct job because we went in through the job to enter the time. So it's going to hit the correct job. We can put our time against a specific task if we need to. We can add a comment here, and just like with the scopes of work on a quote, we can use the AI help if we want to clean up what we've written. We could also add a file, so we can select a file from our desktop, or if you're doing this on a mobile device, when you click Select Files, one of the options it will give you is to open the camera on your phone, and you can take a picture and submit a picture with your timesheet. If you always have that one person who forgets to clean the job site, so you made it a requirement when you do your timesheet, you have to take a picture, then you can do that. And then as I scroll to the bottom here, I have two options as to how I enter my time. I can either just go 8 hours and put, round up my day and put in all 8 hours, or maybe if I'm doing, 2 hours on one job, then moving to the next job, I could do, 2 hours, then, put the next 2 hours in at the end of the work on the next site, or however I want to do it. Or I can click Start Clock when I get to site and Stop Clock when I finish, and it'll calculate the total hours automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 8 hours onto the job. And you'll notice it was approved automatically. That's because I'm a manager with permissions to approve my own time. Mostly technicians will not have that permission. So if I go ahead and unapprove it, this is how it will look when the technician submits their time. And then, of course, it requires the project manager on the job to approve it. So when guys put timesheets in, it goes through a two-stage approval. The first approval is the project manager on the job, so that you can invoice the customer. And then the second approval is when the accountant runs payroll. So I'm going to go ahead and reapprove this time. And you can see now that has affected my margin, and my resource cost of $600 has been recognized. So that's how you recognize cost for labor, is when the timesheet is submitted and that time goes directly onto the job. Okay, so to recognize the cost for the material, we commit the material on the job. So you see here for the wire that we added when we did the quote, we have we required 500 meters. So we have two quantities, required and committed. Required means how much do I need, and committed is how much did I use. So we have 540 meters on hand right now. But rather than use what we have in stock, I'm actually going to make a purchase and purchase this directly to the job. So let's say that I have 540 meters in the facility, but I've actually earmarked that for another job. So the 500 that I require on this job, I'm going to buy direct to the job. So the way to start a purchase order and link it to the job is to select the item in the list, and then we go to our Actions menu, Create PO from selected lines. So we'll do that, and this is where we can open our purchase order. So I'm going to select my vendor here. For the title of the PO, I'm just going to put test of ordering wire. Okay, so now I can confirm that, yep, 500 is what I need. That's the cost per meter, and so I'm going to go start purchase. Okay, so now we've opened a purchase order that's linked to the job. So any material that we buy on this PO is not going to go into our inventory, it's going to go direct to the job. So there's two types of PO you can do through Service 365. You can do one to stock or one to a job. So this is our PO and it's linked to this job. So let's see what we've got here. So we've got delivery instructions, notes that we can add, payment terms. All of this can be edited. Payment terms can be set against the vendor so that it automatically defaults to the correct payment terms when you open a PO to them. And I have three shipping methods. I have deliver to my company address, pick up from vendor, or deliver to the job site. So if you have a PO that's linked to a job like this one, and you select deliver to customer job site address, then the delivery address on the PO will be the address of the job. So if I go over to my lines tab here, and we added, from the job, we added the T90 wire. So that's the only line item on this PO so far. Now we could add more, and we can add, we can add unlimited line items. And if we need to do a bulk order from this supplier, we could link each line item on the PO to a different job in Service 365. So you don't have to do the ratio of one PO to one job. You can do one PO to multiple jobs, and you can do unlimited POs inside of each job as well. So for the sake of keeping it simple right now, we're just going to do this one item. So the order quantity is 500. We haven't received any yet. So if I want to send this to the vendor, I can go release PO. And then if I go back to the hamburger menu and print PO, and there's a preview of what the PDF will look like, so I can send it to the vendor straight through the system. Another nice thing I can do is I can say split lines. So let's say with this 500 meters, if I was doing this for multiple jobs and I needed it in 3 separate reels, I could say split onto 3 reels. So we'll say 200 on this one, 200 on this one, then 100 on the third one. So we could actually split it onto different reels if we needed to, but we'll leave it as one because this is all destined for the same job. So if I go back into the PO, and let's pretend we sent that to the vendor either through the system, or we downloaded it and sent it through Outlook, or we called them, or however we got it to them, we have sent this to the vendor now. So then in the real world, then the actual stuff that we ordered would arrive. So or our technician would have gone and picked it up from the supplier, however we need to do it. So then we need to receive it into the system. So when you physically receive it is when you need to receive the goods into Service 365 as well. So to do that, we put in the packing slip. So I click on the packing slips tab and I go scan packing slip. Here I can put in the packing slip. If I was doing this on my phone, again, it would offer me the chance to take a picture here so the technician can go to the supplier, pick up what he needs, take a picture of the packing slip through Service 365 on his phone, and then you've got that packing slip in the system against the correct PO. And he doesn't need to worry about losing a piece of paper on his way back to the office. So that was what I could do if I was doing it on my phone, but here I will go select PDF, and I'm just going to upload a sample packing slip just for this demo. So we'll upload that. And then once the packing slip is in, this is where we actually do the receiving. So the system's confirming you ordered 500, so far you've received 0, so you're going to receive 500. Now I could change that quantity if the order was coming in multiple shipments. We could do a partial receipt, but just for now I'm going to receive all 500 meters, and I'm going to go auto commit all parts to jobs. So when I'm doing POs linked to jobs and I receive the goods, I can commit them in the same transaction. So if, again, technician is going to the supplier, picking up the stuff, then going straight to the job site and using it, he doesn't need to go back into the job and then commit that material later. You can do it at the same time as receiving. So I'm going to auto commit the parts, and I'm going to say receive. Okay, fantastic. I've received one line and committed it to the job. So the next stage would be At some point I'm going to get a supplier invoice. So depending on what your payment terms are, you're either going to get the invoice straight away or within 30 days or whatever. So to put the vendor invoice in, which is how we close out the PO, I'll click vendor invoices. Again, I just need to upload the document. So I'm going to upload a sample invoice. Okay, so very similar screen to when we did the receiving. We're saying we've ordered 500, received 500. We're going to invoice 500, so we'll put the invoice number in here. We can fill out the document date and the posting date fields. If we leave them blank, it would just default them to today's date, so that's fine. We can leave that. I don't need to auto commit anything because I already did that. And so I'm going to leave send to QuickBooks checked. So that's going to send the supplier invoice across and create a bill in QuickBooks Online. So we'll leave that checked, send to QuickBooks, and we'll say save to PO. That's a duplicate vendor invoice number. So that's the system warning me, okay, you've used this invoice number before for this supplier. That's fine because this is just a demo, but that's actually a handy way of saying check that invoice number, it could be a duplicate. So we'll say save. Okay, and now my PO is closed, everything's done, and so I can go back into the job and go back to my line items tab. Let's just confirm the wire. Yep, we required 500. We no longer have any on order because we finished the order. We've committed 500 because we committed it from the PO. So I can expand the line and see that 500 meters came from that PO, which is now closed. So I can just collapse that again. So that's it. I've now recognized the cost of the labor by putting in the timesheet. I've recognized the cost of the material by committing the material, which we bought on a PO that was linked to the job. So essentially, I'm ready to invoice the customer now. There are other things we can do. You see, there's lots of tabs here that you can manage different aspects of the job, like checklists or attributes, and so on and so forth. But one other thing I just do want to show you, if you go to the hamburger menu and job tasks. So you can see here, these are the tasks that we wrote into the quote in the previous video when we were writing out the scope of work. So a scope of work, whatever you add there, transfers through to the job as a task that you can check is completed. So we can check these off as completed, and these can generate a progress report that you can send directly to the customer as well. So I'm going to mark those tasks as completed. I'm going to mark the whole job as complete as well. So now that kicked the job into the waiting for review status. So if we just back out of the job for a second, let's go back to the home page and then go to the jobs page. So I mentioned in the video about quotes that your jobs, your quotes, your POs, whatever you're creating in the system, they all move through the workflow automatically based on taking some action inside of the system. So there, I just marked that job as complete. So that puts it into waiting for review status. So this is the job we were just in. Now it's in the waiting for review tab, or if we turn on the bucket view, it's in the waiting for review bucket. Okay, so let's go back into the job. And now we're going to create the invoice and close the job. So I'll go to invoicing. So there's three types of invoice you can do in the system: deposits, progress bills, and final invoices. So this is a relatively small job, so we're probably not going to be doing progress bills. But if you have a larger project where you need to progress bill weekly or monthly, you can do that. We're going to make the invoice in a moment, but I just wanted to show you as well. If you go to invoice field settings, you can show or hide any field on the invoice. So any section or any individual line within that section, you can show or hide. And you can make templates for these. Because we've all got that one customer that won't approve an invoice unless it's in a really specific format. So you can very heavily customize the invoice and make templates inside of Service 365. All right, so I'm going to go final invoice and close job. Let's see the options we have here. I can change the invoice description, I can change the line description, I can change the payment terms, and I can change the posting date, but I'm going to leave them all as is for now and say save. Okay, so now my draft invoice is created, which has kicked the job into the next stage of the workflow, awaiting invoice approval. So now I have the invoice as a draft, so I'm going to say process. And again, I get a preview of what the PDF that the customer will receive of what that looks like. So again, it's got all the sections on that we'd expect, and it's got my grid. Now, you'll notice there's only one line in the grid, which is the quoted price. And that's because this is a quoted job. So the invoice is not going to have itemized line items within it. Time and material job, you can do that. You can display each individual line item. Quoted job, generally you would just show them the quoted price. So I've got some options here. I can edit the invoice, download the draft, etc., delete it and start again. But I'm going to say approve. And now the final invoice is approved and the job is closed. So again, my job moved to the next stage when we approved that final invoice. So we can go ahead and take a look at it. Now the approved version, basically the same as what we just saw, except that the draft watermark is now gone. And again, I can send it to the customer directly through the system. So I can do that here. And what I can do as well is attach the quote. So again, if customers are saying, well, can you just remind me of what was on the quote? Now, you've already sent them the quote, of course, but, you know, for ease, just to put it in front of them again, if you want, you can attach the quote when sending that to the customer. And the only other thing to do is to send it to QuickBooks. So if I hit send to QuickBooks, and then that's gone across into my accounts receivable section of QuickBooks. That's created a mirror invoice inside of QuickBooks Online. So there we did. We quoted the customer in the previous video, got their acceptance, turned it into a job. Within the job, we added some timesheets, we purchased some material, committed the material, and then we invoiced out and closed the job.